very long time. So yeah, as you say, there's a whole bunch of different types of universal basic income proposals. And one of the things that we were having trouble with was selling it to people, selling the idea to people, because they would ask a whole bunch of questions about, yes, but what about this bit and what about that bit? And I saw one once that was trialed in whatever country and didn't go well for the following reasons. And so we thought, in order to really spark people's imagination, it would be a really good thing to put together kind of the best form of this that we could come up with. And we spent a very long time thinking about all the different issues. Do people in prison get it? What age do you get it from, et cetera, et cetera. And we designed this universal wellbeing payment for the New South Wales Greens. So we went back to first principles and looked at what exactly an economy should do. And I think we've forgotten over the last 100 years, perhaps, as to what actually an economy is for. It has to provide for the basic needs of everyone within the economy. You need to distribute the surplus fairly and productively. And importantly, it has to increase the well-being of everyone within the economy without breaching out ecological limits. So that was kind of the parameters within which we were doing this thing. So the basic principles, as you would imagine, very similar to universal basic incomes around the world, except for the very conservative ones. The principle is that you recognise that people have a right to a basic living standard, but also that government has an obligation to provide it. And that really turns that sort of neoliberal thinking on its head. This is not about individual responsibility. If people can't find jobs, if people are in poverty, it is the fault of our governments. It recognises that not all work is paid. We all contribute in different ways. And this is really important. I'm also, as well as being the Greens New South Wales portfolio holder for Economy, Treasury and Finance, I'm also the portfolio holder for disability. And I find our current definitions of work to be very ableist. And so recognising that everybody contributes in different ways, and that their right to receive economic well-being should not be tied to their right to provide paid labour. It puts decisions in the hands of those who knows what they need best. And I don't need to tell people on this Zoom how if you give poor people money, it actually results in great things. And people do know how to use money when you give it to them. And of course, it removes the stigma of welfare. We did this little square, again, to kind of turn things on its head and to really think about what we're trying to do here. To make it very clear that poverty is a failure of government to provide for a person's needs. It's something that can be remedied with government action, and it's a lack of cash, not a lack of character. Then we looked at what do we call this thing, and we argued about this for a very long time. We like the word universal. It's the opposite of the neoliberal concept of individual merit, and it promotes the concept of economic rights and responsibilities. We went with well-being because there's nothing basic about the universal well-being payment. It's set at a level intended to allow people to thrive, not just to survive. And it's a payment, not an income, because you don't need to do anything to get it. And it's yours with no strings attached. You can spend it however you like. So what is it? It's a weekly payment for everyone over 16. It covers all of your essentials: housing, food, electricity, water, medicine, internet access, and clothing, things that you actually need in the modern world to get by. No means testing, but it is taxed at the end of the financial year. So we can get to that when we're talking in discussions. And no strings attached. So it's unconditional. And as we say, it's yours to spend however you like. And I'd be happy to talk about the rate that it gets set at. So what we envisage is something called a Wellbeing Standards Board, which sets the amount of the universal wellbeing payment depending on how much things are costing at the particular time. And the reason for this was to stop the universal wellbeing payment being used as an excuse for governments not to also spend on universal education and universal health and universal housing and all the rest of it, because if they make those things more expensive, they'll end up having to pay more out in universal wellbeing payment.
I'll just interrupt for a second. I do remember seeing somewhere on the website the number 550 a week. I put that in the event description as 1,100 a fortnight. So that's the amount that you guys want to launch it at, but you'd have a board like the Fair Work Commission, more or less, which helps set the awards.
Yes.
Based on there would be a sort of negotiated, presumably increase over time, or is it that, or am I being too presumptuous?
Well, it depends how great your government is. But on the flip side, if government was to start providing more services that you didn't have to pay for, then perhaps the cost of living would go down. It is possible that it could decrease, but it certainly wouldn't stay like New Start did at really low levels for decades.
So if it went down, it would be because housing prices, for example, decreased substantially, and you didn't need as much to cover rent.
Exactly. So core features, I've said, it doesn't matter how much you earn. You could be a billionaire and you would still receive this payment, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't get taxed back. So there's actually a complicated kind of structure for the rates at which it gets taxed back. But effectively, if you earn over the median income, you won't see very much of it. But if you earn less than the median income, then you would see almost all of it every week. It's not a substitute for additional benefits, recognising additional needs. So parenting payments, carer payments, mobility payments, all of those things would still be on top for those who need it. Ideally, really ideally, it would be implemented federally, but we do believe it could work at a state territory level. And I feel that as a New South Wales MP, I have a responsibility to the people of this state to suggest ideas to get them out of poverty. And this is certainly something that could work with cooperation with federal agencies. I don't need to tell you the benefits of the universal wellbeing payment. Like all UBIs, there's fantastic benefits in terms of the productivity of people, their creativity, also really basic things like women being able to escape domestic violence, or any victim of domestic violence being able to escape without needing to rely on the finances of the person they're leaving. And really fundamentally, this reduces economic inequality. And I get quite frustrated with some people who are obsessed with the idea that we should be able to do this kind of thing and it not cost anything, or not raise taxes. I think one of the fundamental issues with our economy at the moment is that we have encouraged an increase in economic inequality, and it's going to hurt to fix that and to bring economic inequality down. And this is actually one of the ways that we do that. And I think here, again, something that's no surprise to anybody on this Zoom, but we know what the long-term benefits of any kind of universal basic, well, not any, but in a well-designed universal basic income would be in terms of the kind of health and economic benefits. And one of the problems we have, again, when we come to talk about how much would this cost, is that we're set in this political system where we look at everything in a 3 to 4 year budget cycle, rather than looking at the long-term benefits of something like this.
I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but there's an Oscar Wilde quote, which I think is too perfect and we can't go past. He says that a cynic knows the cost of everything and the value of nothing. And I think that applies in this circumstance very, very aptly.
Yep, I like that quote. So we put together a few squares to kind of get people to understand, mainly sort of, Greens people and Greens friendly people that we were talking to on Facebook, a little bit about the tangible impact that a universal wellbeing payment would have on them. So here's the one, for the domestic violence relationship, for recognising that caring is vital work. Being able to be a student without having to starve.
Some people, it's stupid American thing. Sorry if this.
Someone talking? Is that a... Oh, I'll keep going because I'm almost done through the
Yeah,
slide.
I'm sorry about that. I think there was a bit of background noise from someone's mic, but it's fine now.
All right, no worries. Doing what makes you happy, actually being able to apply your talents where they're best served, rather than having to get a job that you hate and having your talents gone wasted. And then finally, this slide's just to show you our Universal Wellbeing Payment website. If you haven't seen it already, it is very, very detailed, and it covers a whole bunch of Q&As about exactly who this would apply to and how it gets calculated. So we can talk about that as we go. Now I'm going to